Hello, hello, hello. How's it going, folks? Did you have a good week so far? I mean, it's only the beginning. It's only the second date of the second day, sorry, of the week. I hope you had a nice time. I hope you had a nice weekend and all whatever. You know, it's a custom to say. I still am as I'm recording this. I'm struggling a lot with my my headaches, my head pain. It's ridiculous. I tried to power through the day. I did a lot of affirmations in the last couple of days, just because of I think the humidity and the high temperature in the last couple of days in London. Uh, it's just been so crazy for me because I struggle to sleep properly. I wake up sweaty. I wake up tired. Already. I don't go to sleep. I can't fall asleep as easy as I would, and that's affected me quite a bit throughout the day. So yeah, I went to the point where I just had to, I don't know, just radical acceptance was wildly used in the last, I guess, week. And then on top of that, I had to do a lot of mindfulness, opposite action. I used a lot of opposite action because at times I thought I would just, cancel all my plans for the day, maybe like cancel work, as in, like calling sick. And instead, I went through and I tried to, again, I did the exact opposite of what I thought I should be doing, and it kind of worked out. Again, it was hard, and I had to keep myself in checks a lot. uh yeah, I think I had to also use, I guess, please, to an extent, because um I had to basically make sure that I am looking after myself as as good as possible. I had to make sure that, although again I lack the sleep, I was, well nourished, that I take my supplements, I take my vitamins, I drink water. I try to, again, I tried like small and like more frequent meals rather than like big meals and less frequent. And I also, which was quite heartbreaking, because I wasn't able to run as much as I wanted to. I wasn't able to do as much like exercise, um, just because of how my like sore my legs felt, and how, again, how bad everything hurt. I just felt sore and tired, and it was hard, and it was actually really hard to not be hard on myself for yeah, not being able to do all these things that I was planning to do, and to then not give in, and kind of just feel like, oh well, might as well just stop forever. What's the point? Luckily, I think I posted on Strava. I posted a run, one of the two runs I did last week, which was terrible. The pace was bad, and the pain that I was feeling after was so indirectly proportional with, again, the actual distance and the time. I've only run for 21 minutes at a really bad pace, even for me. Like, that was like 8:30 per minute, which is so bad comparing to my normal running pace, which at the moment, or like in a while, it's been around the 7.0 mark, 7 minutes per kilometer. And yeah, it was just so hard to like not be angry with myself, and not want to, I guess, punish myself, but then, luckily, not luckily, but um I'm very grateful that one of my mates, who is just incredible runner. She's amazing, and but she's also very um, incredibly like encouraging. You know, at times like this, um, basically texting me about like how uh, to try and build mastery in a different way if. The one thing that I wanted to do, which was the run, didn't go as planned. And I thought, you know what, let's see how this goes. And I did a lot of, I tried the Shakti mat, you know, the acupuncture stuff. And I've been standing on it, you know, for 20 minutes a day in the evening, usually before I go to bed. And then I also sit on it, you know, I sit like I lay down on the mat with my back on the mat for also another 20 minutes. And sometimes, and I'll probably do it after I finish recording this, I put my head on it as well. And it's been amazing in the last few days. The help that he gave me, I was just not able to use it today so far. I'm pre-recording this, so I've been in and out of the house all day today, and so I didn't have the time to use it. And now I'm just kind of excited to, you know, let you enjoy the episode. And yeah, me using the Shakti mat for my head, which feels like it might explode soon. But you know what? I think that's enough for me. I will let you enjoy my conversation with Leslie. Um, she's um, she's just a lovely person. I've only met her, although I've only met her a couple of times, and but I think you will see from the conversation, and also I sometimes like I read through her Facebook posts, and I kind of see her like social status updates and stuff like that, and I read that, and I'm like, oh my god, this is just wonderful. And also she runs a gig that's just beautiful. So if you're either in, you'll hear us talking about it. She is, and the night is based in London, but now she's going to Edinburgh to do the I think the full run. I might. I think it is. Yes, it's the full run, but you can see her socials in the bio of the podcast as well. But yeah, just a great chat, and it was just so nice talking to her, and it's just been wonderful even after I kind of exchanged some messages about like feedback on a set that I've done, and she's been very helpful. She's been just very helpful, and again, wonderful person. And it was such a good chat. Like I have went through some of it in listening when putting this together, and obviously I did the sound checking, but I can't remember because obviously our conversation is pre-recorded from about a month or so ago. um but yeah, it was just nice chatting, and I hope you enjoy it just as much listening to it. And yeah, I'll catch you before we say our goodbyes for this week. Brilliant. So, Leslie, hello. How's it going?
Hi, how are you?
You know, I'm very good. I'm enjoying the nice weather. It's been a nice week.
Yeah, it makes a change, doesn't it?
It does. It's such a wild. Yeah, it just so I still find it interesting how easily it is to actually like feel better just because you have a little bit of extra sun.
Yeah. Yeah, I love living in the UK. I'm not originally from here, and one of the things that always blows my mind is that you can have any season, any day. You know, it could be anything. It could be snow in August, that could happen. It could be, beautiful and sunny in March. There's no rhyme or reason to it, so it's always interesting.
Well, so was it not like this? Because if you so where are you? Where did you move here from?
I'm from New Jersey
New
in
Jersey,
America,
and
and so we have like defined seasons. Like winter is cold, summer is hot, and you can usually predict based on the calendar roughly what the weather's going to be, and you can't do that in the UK. I mean,
how did
loose.
you? You are the, no, I mean I agree with you because I think in I think only a couple of weeks ago I went to work in shorts for the first time this year because I like on my day job I went on short in shorts for the first time and I was like, oh, this is gonna be great. And then it started raining while I was at work.
Yeah,
And yeah, I think it happens, and it's such a yeah, it's classic. I think from the very first time when I moved into the UK and I went for to do my college interview, and on the way to the bus stop, um, I got rained on, so I had to go back home, get changed. I took a I took a rain jacket on, and then I ended up getting to the interview soaked in sweat because now it got like really sunny all of a sudden.
yeah. The weather, it's always interesting, and there's yeah, which is cool. And it's one of the first things I noticed the first time I came to the UK on holiday is that when it rains, things don't stop. People just crack on with what they're doing. Whereas, like where I'm from, if the skies open up, everyone's like, "Oh my God, cancel everything, run, hide." Whereas here, it's just like, yeah, it's another Thursday, whatever.
So when did you first come to England?
I first came here. I came here for what I thought at the time was a once in a lifetime trip in October 2001.
How did you find it?
I loved it. I wouldn't say I'm an Anglophile because that makes people think you're like into the royals and all that kind of nonsense. Um, but I've always liked British authors and British musicians, and so I came to the UK as a visitor, thinking I'd come once, it would be amazing, and I'd soak it all up, and I just loved almost everything straight away.
So how
And
long
then,
were you? Sorry, go on.
well, no, then I met someone on that trip who
Oh,
is now my ex-husband.
oh, okay.
That's the shortest version of that story.
Okay. So you met your okay, but then because how long were you here for the first time then? Like how long was your holiday?
Oh, it was like 6 days. And then and then what happened? Then he came to visit me, and then I came to visit him, and then he came to visit me. We got engaged. And then we got married 16 months after we met, but we'd only actually spent 31 days together. Yeah. So he's my ex husband.
Look, as long as it works out, it works out. That's
Oh, no, it's fine. We got divorced a long time ago. We were married well, we were happily married for a year, and we were married in total for 7.5 years.
oh my God. So but you tried. That's the thing, I think
Well,
it's
one of us tried anyway.
uh yeah, I think my parents, I don't know, they were like 20 something years. I mean, I think they were together for 20 something years, but I don't know how much of it was happily, to be honest. I think you can pretty much count it as in like the days that you were counting before the engagement.
No, man. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Relationships are, they're fodder for comedy, really.
I think so. I think at least, it's something when something happens, it's either good or it's material,
Yeah.
you know? And
Sometimes both.
sometimes both, yeah. I can see that. And wait, so and did you always live in London when you were in the UK?
No, when I first moved here, I lived in Salisbury, which is in the southwest near Stonehenge.
Oh yeah, the Salisbury where the
Yeah.
attack
Where the
happened.
poisoning was. Yeah, that's everyone
Yeah.
says that now. That was after I left Salisbury. So like that's not my first thought. Because I moved there I moved from just outside New York City, right? One of the busiest places in the world to Salisbury. It's a very small city with not a lot of people in it, not a lot of diversity. It's beautiful. It's lovely. There's a lot to be said about it. My ex-husband is from Salisbury, and yeah, and I lived there for a long while. And actually, I think it was probably good to move from just outside New York to a tiny city that is really only a city because it's got a cathedral, because they were so different. So It
Okay.
saved. There was never a risk of comparing the two because they you can't compare them. They're so different. Whereas I think if I'd moved straight to London, it would have been too easy to compare New York and London, which are similar like siblings, right? Because New York is an incredible place. London also. I love London. I've been living in London for 12, 13 years now, and I love it. But they're almost like siblings, you know? They're as similar as that. They each have their own distinct personality, but they're very, very similar. Whereas Salisbury, I don't know if you've seen that. It's very beautiful. It's a very well formed, teeny tiny, itty bitty little city. And it's, you know, and I didn't even live in Salisbury for most of the time I was there. I lived in a village outside of Salisbury, which was different.
What? Wait, so but what? So do you prefer then, like being because I've never actually spoke with anyone from New York or even like from outside New York about being this close. Like, do you actually prefer smaller cities?
Well,
Like, if you were to
London's
live in
not
a
New York.
no, but I meant as in like compared
No,
to like
no.
Salisbury's as well. Like, if you were to choose today where you would live, like what's your, I guess, like your dream
I think
place
I'm
to live
living my
in?
dream. I think I am. Not to be all smug, but I live in I live in Southeast London, right? I live in a green area. I can go for a walk. I can walk less than a mile from my house and see horses, right? Because there's a place near me that has horses and donkeys, which makes me so happy. But also, I'm 15 minutes on a train from London Bridge. Like, I'm living the dream, baby. This is great. I've got, I can be anywhere I need to be quite easily, but also there's a lot of green space. There's a lot of, dare I say, fresh air. Don't get
As
me
fresh
started.
as as fresh as
Yeah,
it comes in
but
London.
like, yeah, and I think I'd like to think I'm quite an adaptable person. I've moved house a lot. I grew up just outside New York City, but not in one place. I've moved house 28 times in my life, which
What?
is a lot. It's a lot. Yeah. And
How?
most of that was when I was a kid. So while it was a miserable, difficult, challenging experience to do all that moving, I think it has made me much more adaptable as a person.
What?
So yeah, we moved a lot.
Uh,
Well,
Around New York, but
uh,
just
no, I wasn't born in. I was born in Ohio,
oh.
but I don't remember. I was a baby at the time, and then we lived just outside Chicago for a year. But so I can't. My pedantic brain won't allow me to say I've never been to Chicago because I have, but I was a baby at the time. Don't remember that. We moved. We moved to New York State when I was 2, and we lived in a couple of places there. I switched schools. The first time I switched schools was in kindergarten. I switched schools 2 months into kindergarten, which is crazy. And then we moved to New Jersey when I was 10, and then all around New Jersey a lot, and then a year in Arizona, which I hate, and then back to New Jersey, and I lived in New York for a bit again, and back to Jersey, and then I moved to England.
What?
I lived in 8 different towns in New Jersey at
And
various
where do you did you study
in New Jersey,
in
yeah,
New Jersey as well?
University in New Jersey. Um,
Oh.
and yeah, it was funny because like I started uni when I was 17, so I'm a little bit younger than most of my classmates. So I'm like right at the end of my school year, and before I turned 18, my parents moved away. So that was it. I was smooth sailing on my own.
Wow. Well, the thing is, I came to England when I was 17, so I kind of like since then I had to live on my own. But
Samesies, yeah.
but still, not easy though. That's the thing. It's such a, and also I feel like to me now, you actually my brain almost froze for a second, thinking that it's actually your parents who were like, oh, actually, we are going.
Well, there's a lot there. There's a lot. It's no surprise I'm a comedian. Let's put it that way.
No way. Did you did you always have a creative outlet like growing
No,
up?
no, that's kind of the opposite. I mean, I never felt like a creative person until I started doing comedy 4 years ago.
No
4 years
way.
ago, yeah.
What were you
Um,
into then? Like, were you was in music or were you watching comedy?
I've always loved consuming comedy,
Hmm.
and I always thought of myself as a writer, but I didn't actually write anything. I knew I had the capacity to be a writer, and I always thought I'd write a novel or a sitcom. I really want to write a sitcom, but I didn't know where to begin, and it was always the threat of the blank page. And I never thought my. I used to say I was born with a birth defect, and that I never had an imagination. I don't believe I'm a very imaginative person. I'm quite literal in my thinking. And so I never felt like creative. I'm a good writer. I'm a strong writer, and I've always used that in my work. Um, so I've worked as a journalist and I work in the charity sector. And so written communication is it's a strength. It's something I'm good at, but it was never creative. It was functional.
Right.
So writing, I used to be a music reviewer in my 20s, and that there's not a huge amount of creativity in that because I just write like, oh, I saw this band, they were great. I really like this. They were really like on fire on stage. Like to not good journalism, just paid the bills.
Still, wait. So how did you get along? Like, how would you find out who to review as a music journalist?
Oh, I mean, music journalist is really sounds a lot more sophisticated than it was. I worked for a magazine that was like an entertainment magazine in New Jersey. And I actually was hired originally as a graphic designer because I learned, well, journalism school. I learned graphic design as part of that.
Right.
Then it was an employable skill, right? So I
Right.
got a job as a graphic designer. But then this magazine is like a freebie magazine, but it went to like 250,000 people every week.
Right.
And often we'd get like, I pitched the idea to the editor that I could go and write a music column. And it would usually be at the venues that were advertising with us. So it was like not a lot of actual journalism happening. But
Hmm.
I wouldn't say a band was great if I thought they were terrible. Can I curse on this, by the way?
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah, please
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
Yeah. No, no, you feel free. This is freedom of speech.
Like if I went to
I
see
mean,
a band,
obviously,
yeah, if I went to see a band and they were dog shit, I would either challenge myself to find something positive to write about them, or they would know I'd been to see them and then I would not review them. So,
ah,
but I didn't, it wasn't proper journalism. Like I couldn't sleep. Like I could, if I saw a band that was dog shit, I couldn't write, these guys are terrible musicians. Like I couldn't write that. That would not get published in my magazine. I
is
don't think.
there anyone that you catched while doing this job that then like went really like then you saw their names, I guess, like years later or something, and you're like, oh my God,
There's
I
a few, yeah. There's a few that I was able to like. I was really excited, and they're not bands that are like massive, and also probably not mainstream because my taste isn't particularly mainstream. But I remember there was like a hardcore punk band called H2O, and they quoted me in their press pack. They included my review in their press pack, and I was so excited. But that, yeah, and I got like it was cool. I was in my 20s, and I got like free passes to like music festivals and concerts and stuff. It was all right.
that's amazing. Yeah, and also to have that as a job, I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I'm not complaining. It was pretty cool. But it wasn't. But it wasn't like it wasn't a creative outlet. I
Yeah.
didn't think. It was a skill set. I think anyone can learn to be a good writer, but it wasn't. I wasn't expressing myself in any kind of truly creative way. And the first thing I've ever done in my life where I felt creative was the first time I wrote a comedy set.
And how did you get around doing that?
Bit of a funny story. Um,
Okay.
so I've always loved comedy, and I used to work at this charity, and a couple guys who were there were comedians. One was a sketch comic, one was a stand-up, and they were doing some fundraising because they were running the New York Marathon, so they were putting on a comedy show to raise money for their marathon fundraising, right?
Okay.
And the one guy knew that I loved comedy and knew that in my 20s I was briefly in a sketch comedy troupe. I got kicked out of that troupe because I dated the wrong guy. Anyway.
What?
Yep. But he knew I liked comedy. So one night we were out at the pub, all of us, and we were having drinks, and he says, "Hey, I'm putting on this comedy night as part of our fundraising. Do you want to do a set?" And I was like, yeah, I was probably 5 G&Ts in at the time. And I was like, yeah, totally, definitely. That sounds really great. So I said I'd do it. And it was like 6 weeks away. And I stopped drinking at that point because I was excited. I was like, I can try this once, cross it off my bucket list. Right. That was my clear thought. I came home that night. I opened my laptop and I just wrote a set. I had no idea what I was doing. I just wrote some things that I thought were funny. And then over the next, because it was like 6 weeks before this gig, and I spent that time like looking over, refining it, trying to learn it, trying to figure out how to comedy, because I had no idea what I was doing. It turns out most comedians I know like started by taking a course, and it never occurred to me to do that. So my first ever set was actually, I said to the guy, I said to Greg, I said, "How long do you want me to do?" And he said, 10 minutes. Now, I know now that's ridiculous because most comics do 5s when they start, at least in the UK. I think it's different elsewhere. And so my first set was 10 minutes, which is,
Well,
you're
4 years
making
ago.
a face. Your listeners can't hear this. You're making such a face.
Yeah, I know, because I agree with you. I think it's ridiculous, to go on.
To go from nothing to 10 minutes. And it wasn't bad. It was the most remarkable thing because I thought the whole time I was planning for this, I will do this once, I will cross it off my bucket list, and I could say I've done the thing. Right. And also I used to have terrible crippling stage fright. So this was a big thing for me.
Interesting.
But I did it and I loved it. And I got some laughs. And I don't think they were all pity laughs because the audience, most of them didn't know that I was new until after. And then they were surprised, which was really nice. And immediately I came off stage, I was like, I must do that again. And I haven't stopped since. That was 4.5 years ago.
So, because you were saying they were in the New York Marathon, but they were
But they
fundraising,
live here. That
but
was
they
in
live
London.
here.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And on the back of that though, because I think, is it because, I mean, I don't know, like as an outsider and as someone who actually struggles to get their point across, sometimes you're like, oh, where are you going with this? Or at least struggle more at the beginning. Do you think the fact that you've been writing for such a long time and you did this for a living, it kind of helped you to be like, that's why this is funny, because because sometimes you listen to like a comedian now and you're like, hey, where are you going with this?
Mm.
While do you feel like you had that, oh, that's where I'm going
I
earlier?
think it helped. I think most comics are either strong writers at the beginning who need to work on their performance or strong performers who need to work on their writing. And I actually think people who start out as strong performers have it easier. And maybe I'm just saying that because that's not me. I did learn performance because I had no idea at all what to do. So I think the writing background helped because I've always been a reasonably good communicator. But I have to say, looking back, a lot of my stuff in my first year was more like a TED Talk than a comedy set. It was not necessarily very funny. I'm not great at writing jokes.
Wait, what was I going to ask? How did you, so when you started writing, you're like, okay, this is like the first, did you know how long in advance did you know it's going to be at 10?
Only like maybe halfway, like 3 weeks before. Because I
3 weeks.
and I wrote the thing, and then I went away from it, and then I looked back at it, and I was like refining it. And it didn't even occur to me at first to practice out loud to figure out how long it was.
You know,
nothing.
Actually, like something that really struck me about the when you're saying like, oh yeah, some people they do like these comedy courses, you know,
Hmm.
and I realized actually I haven't done one either because I thought, what if I'm bad? Like, what if I'm really bad at this and I'm wasting the money?
Yeah. But it
And
didn't even occur to me. And then later, everyone's like, oh, yeah, I took this course and I took that course. And I'm like, that's probably a smarter way to do this.
no, I think I used to just go to libraries and or like I would go to charity shops and I try to
Mhm.
find like comedy sketch, like comedy writing books or even like biographies of comedians. And
Yeah,
I would buy them for like as cheap as possible. Like as I'm telling you, I can see the my first comedy techniques is the first book that I've ever bought. I think I paid £2 for it.
nice.
Yeah, and I think I've only read it once, and because okay, no, because I started. So basically, you started what just before COVID,
Yeah, 6 months before.
6 months before, and then you were like, "Oh my God, I love this. This is great." And then
Yeah, I had
you
my
find out that
first,
you can't do it for a while.
well, I had my first paid gig on March 13th, 2020. Timing's everything in comedy, isn't it? But I had my first paid gig and I'm like, this is going places. This is going to be great. And then lockdown immediately happened. And a series of things happened in order, which were distressing. So obviously lockdown was distressing. But the first week of lockdown, my dog died.
Sorry
Um,
again.
Thank you. I mean, I loved, she was old. She'd been unwell for a couple of years. I'd had her longer than I've had my partner. Like, I'd had her 12 years at that point. She was about 15. She was a rescue dog. And she was
Oh,
uh, just the best dog in the world. And I was heartbroken, obviously. And especially because at the start of lockdown, it's like, okay, we're going to be in the house for an unknown period of time. At least we've got the pets. Oh, wait. And the house felt so empty. I mean, we have a cat as well, but the cat is less clingy than the dog was. The dog was my best friend. And the house was just, whenever a pet dies, you feel like the house is empty. But we were stuck in this house that I was feeling the absence of my dog very great, very deeply. Of course I was, and don't get me wrong, a lot of people had it a hell of a lot worse than me. But for me, I was in a grief place right at the start of lockdown. And I think that's one of the reasons, one of probably the main reason that I did my first Zoom gig because like everybody else in the world, I thought Zoom gigs sounded like a terrible idea. But I needed to think about something that wasn't dog shaped for a bit because I was in a very grief stricken place, and so I wrote a set for a Zoom gig, and that was just a couple weeks after the dog died, and I did a lot of Zoom gigs over lockdown. I did like I don't know 50 or something ridiculous. I was gigging a lot. And I know a lot of people didn't, and I know people are sniffy about Zoom gigs, and I agree, they're shit. I did So You Think You're Funny on Zoom. It was brutal.
same.
Yay! Were you in that same year?
No, I did it because I only done it for so I've done it I think as at the end of the lockdowns because I've been in comedy for 2.5 years now.
Oh, so were you 2022 you did it?
Yeah,
Okay, because I originally signed up for So You Think You're Funny. I was supposed to be in the class of 2020, but of course that didn't happen.
yeah.
So they pushed us back, and then it was 2021. So I did it in like March of 2021, but it was on Zoom. I went to the semifinals. I did all right, but it was um
2022. Yeah, 2022.
yeah. So you were the year after me, and it was weird, and it was fine, and whatever. But I did a lot more Zoom gigs than some of my contemporaries, and I feel like for all their faults, and there's many, because it's not the same and it's hard to read audience and all this stuff. But it kept me writing, it kept me creating stuff, it kept me thinking about comedy. So I developed some skills during the course of lockdown that I wouldn't have done if I'd not done all those Zoom gigs. And I started my own show on Zoom, which is now a live show, regular fixture. And
No
that's
way. I had
Yeah.
no idea. So far, so fun. It started as a Zoom gig.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because I wanted to learn how to MC, and the best way to do that I knew was start your own gig. So I did.
Well, so you were doing it over Zoom. You were like, "Hey, how's everyone doing?"
Well, yeah, it was a bit. I always had a gratitude to Stuart Goldsmith. Do you know Stu?
I'm not sure.
Comedian podcast. Um, Stu Goldsmith is a font of knowledge about comedy. And during lockdown, he started a show online that I think started on Zoom and moved to Twitch. And it was called The Infinite Sofa. And he'd have all these amazing comedians on, but he'd also have members of the public in the Zoom room. And it would be really interactive and whatever. And so a bunch of us were these members of the public that were involved in the show and formed like a whole community around that. It was a really nice, inclusive, friendly community, which still exists online to this day. And what happened was, so we're all like convening online regularly to watch Stu's show and to take part and whatever. And conversations came about where a lot of the people in that community were comedy nerds. We're all comedy nerds. And a bunch of them wanted to try comedy but never had. And I was, there were a few of us who'd already done comedy before lockdown, but not, any extensive amount of experience. So I said, you know what? I really want to try emceeing. You've said you want to try comedy. What if I put on a Zoom gig? You can have a go. I can have a go at emceeing. It'll be like a workshop. So the first one was a private Zoom room. And I think 6 or 7 people did their first ever comedy spot on that. And then we had a couple people who'd already been doing comedy who were in the community, and they like opened and closed the show. And I got to figure out how to MC, and it was great. And that was also going to be a one-time thing. This seems to be a theme in my life. It was going to be try it once, see what happens. And it went really well. And so I said, okay, let's do it again. So we did another one the next month, and that went really well. And then scheduled one for the following month, but it coincided with Red Nose Day. So we said, let's do it as a fundraiser. And I said to the crew, I said, look, if we're going to do this, we can't have it be a private invitation only Zoom room. If it's going to be a fundraiser, we've got to open it up. So we opened it up, and we had 100 people in the Zoom room, which was unheard of for Zoom gigs at the time. It was great. It was fun. And then we kept on, and it became a monthly show. And then when we came out of lockdown, I said, oh, I wonder if I can put this on in real life. So the first show was called Sofa So Funny IRL, right, in real life. And it was Sofa So Funny because Stuart's show was The Infinite Sofa, so we were the Sofa Fam. And so the show started as So Fam So Funny. And then, it started, the first live show was at Faversham Fringe because I wanted to try it in a low-risk environment and see what the stress points were, what would break, what would work. So we did Faversham Fringe, which is a really lovely fringe. Highly recommend it. It's very friendly. It's very personable. It's very inexpensive, low risk, but really nice rewards. So we did it there, and it worked. And the next day I took a day off work, off my day job, and went into London to find a venue to host a regular show. And that's how my show started.
But
And so the first live show in London was in September 2021. So that was 2.5 years ago.
I started, October 2021 then? Yeah, I think I started in October 2021. So a month. I mean, but I agree with you, and I think when you were talking about like the way this came along, I also realized because I started writing. I started writing in the beginning of 2021. I think after I watched Death to 2020, I was like, you know what? I reckon I can do this. And and I started writing, and I haven't done it for months. And I still remember throughout that time, I was going through, which sadly ended up with like my mom passing away. But I was back in Romania, and I would just like write material. And I think like my because my sister would be at work, I would look after like her kids, and we'd just be at home. And like the only thing that genuinely like helped, because I think for a while I started looking for I got LinkedIn Premium, and I started doing like get a degree or like get qualification for Excel and Word and whatever. And I was like, ah, this is bullshit. And then I thought, oh, you know what, I'm just gonna start writing jokes, and like I'm just gonna continue writing the jokes I wrote before. And I now, as you were talking about like the way, you dealt with your own, grievance, and like with your own struggles, and you were like, at least this is my time to not think about, the sad things. I was like, oh yeah,
Mm.
that was me. I still remember now. I was like, I was in the kitchen, and I would just like open up my Mac, and I would just like start like type away. And I don't think anything from it actually worked. But although actually I'm lying, I think my first ever joke, I still use it because it's good. It's okay.
Nothing
Uh,
wrong with the comics do that. I
but
have some
yeah,
stuff. I think I have one line that I still do regularly that I think was in my first ever set.
but this is amazing because I agree. I think it's such a. I think sometimes I don't know. Does it happen to wherever you like you tell someone like, oh yeah, I do stand up comedy, and then they're like, oh my God, this sounds like it's such a courageous thing to do. And I'm
Yeah,
like, no, I think
you're
if
so
anything,
brave.
if anything, I feel like it's so amazing to actually be able to do what like actually drives you. Because I know like when I don't do well, I'm like, this is terrible, but I still want to do it again. While on any
Yeah.
other jobs or anything else that I've done, I'm like, nah, I'm done with this. But then also when it goes well, you're like, okay, what's next?
Yeah, I think the thing that's different for me about comedy from everything else I've ever done is it felt like discovering a part of myself I didn't know existed before. That sounds wanky. But it's true. So like I I was briefly in a sketch comedy troupe in my 20s and that didn't go well. Uh and I didn't know what I was doing. And then I was in like an Amdram group several years ago where I tried to act and I wasn't very good at that. And the comedy felt like there's an autonomy to comedy, to writing your own material and performing your own material. It's either you or it's not. There's no bullshit. There's no filter. There's no, I mean, there is a filter. There should be a filter. But it's like, I always used to think I wanted to be an actor, but when you're acting, you're mostly doing somebody else's work. You're taking somebody else's creative vision and you're trying to bring that to life. And that's great if you can do that. But to me, comedy was a revelation because I'm creating my own thing and then I'm bringing it to life, which is never really felt like I never imagined that was something I would do or be able to do. So it is, yeah, like you said, when it goes well, you're like, what's the next thing? But when it goes badly, I still feel like this is what I should be doing because the idea of not doing it just seems odd. Although I was talking with another comedian, a pro comedian, the other night about this, who revealed that he too has this sort of daydream of when I stop comedy, and I think that's quite a common thing. So I tell myself that when if this journey ends at some point, if I realize that I'm just shit or I'm just never going to get better or whatever, my daydream is, well, then I'm not going out 4 or 5 nights a week. Then I can adopt a dog. So it's a win-win. So either I keep doing comedy and keep getting better, and this is the other thing that's amazing about comedy is you can see yourself improving, which is very rare in the world, I think. Or maybe I've just been doing everything else poorly. I don't
Like food tastes the same as
But like I can see myself improving, and if the point comes where it's not good for my mental health or it's not good for whatever, if I ever need to stop doing this, then I comfort myself with the idea that then I will just have a quieter life with a dog in it, and that's That's a good thing. But I can't have a dog right now because I'm out too many nights a week gigging.
But you see, this is the I agree. I agree. I see that a lot because I know I was chatting with like other people before this, when they were. I think someone. I think it might have been Rowan, who was saying something like, no, because I think he stopped for a while, or he was like, you know what, I'm gonna stop because I'm not going anywhere. But then he was actually like, oh, actually, I feel sadder without it than I feel
Mm.
with it, so I'd rather keep at it, and then things kind of like like it turned for better, because he realized that he's enjoying this more. And I feel like I agree with you, and I think in every single, I find it now that every single thing that I do, I feel like it's a not necessarily just a constant in my life, but it's also like this sort of, I want to get, like, I want to do it, like I always, is one of those things where it says, oh, always like try to take the positives from every situation, which I don't necessarily do in every situation. While I feel like in with comedy, I'm like, again, whether it went really well, I'm like, oh my God, this is brilliant. But I think last week I tried the five, no, on Friday I did the 5 minute like new material just to try some jokes, and from the all the new stuff that I tried, I think it was two lines that got like big laughs, and I was like, you know what, it was worth it. I'm glad I got out of the house. I'm glad I went to do it. I didn't like, it was so easy for me to go like, this is the positive from tonight.
Yeah, and then you can build on that. Like if something lands with an audience the first time you do it, then there's definitely room to develop that.
And it's, yeah, I think it's just wonderful. I feel like the more I talk about it, the more I feel like I'm like in school again, and I have like the first crush. I'm like, oh, comedy, I love it. But I genuinely do. I think it just makes it so much easier. But because you were saying about, oh, also the doing like online gigs. I only did a couple, and which one of them, no, I did a few charity gigs on Zoom. But then I did a sofa, sorry, I did a sofa, I did the So You Think You're Funny. I did the So You Think
Yeah.
You're Funny over Zoom, and it was again, it was interesting. But then I've also, a while after, I managed to do a gig for a TV, for a TV thing. And you know what? It actually helped. The Zoom gigs helped me out a lot to do the TV, because in TV, I always thought that, like, for example, in Seinfeld, they have like a real audience in, but the audience that was, at least
Mm.
like at the TV bit that I've done, the audience wasn't there like to laugh. They were just there to like be to look like people are in the audience. So I actually ended up doing 3 minutes of jokes in silence, and
Oh,
if anything, I found that the Zoom gigs actually helped me out quite a bit.
yeah, that is a lot like Zoom. I don't. You know, Zoom gigs. I got a lot out of them, but I don't miss them at all.
But how did you get, like, how did you, I mean, this is amazing to think that, like, you got this thing going for like one night, and then you're like, oh, let's do it in person, and then you take it to the Fringe, and then you took even, like, I think the whole planning of like, oh, I'm taking the day off from my day job to go and look for venues. That's still like, that's like, it sounds like you had like how long did it take you to basically build this structure, or were you always this sort of like how do you come across as like making those plans and ideas? Is it something that you're like, oh, that's it, I'm gonna do it, or do you work on these for long periods of time, or I don't know, yeah, what's the
I'm
drive?
like every other comedian. I have ADHD, and what that means is when I have an idea that I'm excited about, it's like winding up a toy and letting it just go. Right.
Right.
So when I have an idea that I'm excited about, I normally will try and get it started straight away. Because if I don't, then it won't happen. And I know that. So so last night I put on a gig that was in memory of a friend of mine who died last year. And
Sorry about your loss.
Thank you. I did that because he was a big comedy fan. He loved to laugh. And it seemed like a really lovely way to honor his memory. Right. But what happened was, um, I was at I was at his funeral last year, and in the eulogy, somebody said, he was a man of many enthusiasms. His name was Boz, and one of his enthusiasms was comedy. He loved to laugh. He was always looking for the positive, always looking for a laugh. And they said that they talked about his favorite comedians, and I was one of them, and it blew my mind. And I thought, oh my God, I have to do something. And in the funeral service, there was discussion about how we should all try to be more Boz, right? Because Boz was my friend who died. We all wanted to be more Boz. And I thought, I know how to be more Boz. I'll put on a gig in his memory, comedy gig to raise money for charity, which is very Boz. And so I had that thought at the funeral. And then last night we put on that gig. And we raised £1,100 for East Anglian Air Ambulance, who tried to help Boz. He was killed in a hit and run accident. So we raised money for a charity to try to help him. And the room was full of his friends and his family and lots of other people as well. And we had Nish Kumar headlining, and it was extraordinary. And it was Stuart Laws, who was also friends with Boz. And it was Esther Manito and Izzy Sutty and Mark Thomas. And it was an extraordinary night. And it was exactly what I pictured through the grief of losing this friend so unexpectedly, so suddenly, and he was only young. And it was this idea, but it started last year when I was sitting there and I thought, God, I've got to put on a gig because I know how to put on gigs now. That's a thing I could do. And I thought, how am I going to deal with this? And so I waited a reasonable amount of time. I didn't do the normal thing where I'm like, ping, do the next thing. I waited a reasonable amount of time and spoke to my friend's wife, his widow, to make sure that she was okay with that. Because obviously I don't want to, she's a friend as well. I don't want to upset her. And so then through these conversations, we were able to put on this gig. And it took months of planning. And it was a night I will never forget. It was an amazing thing. And it was so, it's a lovely way to honor my friend who loved to laugh. He loved comedy. And it was a really positive thing to come out of something terrible. But it was, I am the wind up toy. You start me going, I will get the thing done, but I have to get it. Once it passes sort of critical capacity, then it will happen. And it's just, and it's like, I run a gig, it's twice monthly at the moment. And I have a structure that I've developed over the last couple of years where I've got, a booking process and I've got a promotion process and I've got artwork. I do all the artwork for my gig as well. And I do all that. And I've got structures in place now, but those happen because I go, oh, I'm going to try this. And then I go and I do the thing, often to the detriment of whatever else it is I'm supposed to be doing. My house,
Okay, so it
you know,
does have okay, there
sure.
is a downside, or there is a
But
um
yeah, but gee, Leslie, would you rather promote a really fun gig where people are going to laugh and have a great time, or would you rather do the laundry? Give me a fucking choice, will you? I mean, I do enough laundry that I wear clean clothes out in the world, but my house is never going to win any kind of awards for tidiness, and it doesn't have to. So,
I was gonna, and I want to ask you a question about the being like having ADHD. How do you find it? Like, does it affect you at all or when you're on stage, or like do you feel, like, because for example, to me, because of my own dysregulation, like my personality disorder, I sometimes, if I'm not feeling well, it's hard for me to like actually keep focus.
hmm.
And I really, while to you, do you ever feel, or like, can you just switch on where you're like, you know what, this is my set, I'm on now, that's it? Or do you find it even on stage where sometimes does your like mind just jump around or anything like that?
Mostly no. Mostly when I'm on stage, I'm more focused than I am almost any other time in my life, which is one of the reasons I feel like I'm doing the right thing pursuing this comedy because I feel at home. I feel like I'm an authentic aspect of my true self on stage. Right? It's not all of who I am, but it's an authentic part of who I am. And I'm pissed off that I didn't discover this till I was 47 years old. All that wasted time. Decades of going, I have no imagination. But when I'm on stage, I love it. I love it so much. I feel like one aspect of my true self on stage. And I'm not gonna. That sounds a bit wanky, but it's not always a good gig. When I have a bad gig, I can tell you this: if I go into a gig and I'm feeling deflated or at all depressed, and not in the there's two kinds of depression. I'll go into that in a moment. There's two different. Depressed means two different, very different things. Clinical depression, I don't currently suffer from and haven't for a long time, but I did in my early 20s. And when I say if I go on stage depressed, I don't mean clinical depression. I mean situational depression. If I've had a shit day and I'm not feeling up for it. But I am very fortunate in that I do not and haven't for a long time suffered from clinical depression. And I have way too many people in my life who do, and I have a lot of empathy and sympathy for people who are dealing with that because it's brutal. But if I go on stage and I'm feeling depressed, situationally depressed, whatever, I will not be able to perform to my best. I will have a bad gig. And I know that. And most of the time I can G myself up enough that it's not a thing. Whatever's bothering me, what I'm going to do is go out there for my 10 minutes, my 20, 15, whatever the set length is, or emceeing, which is great in a whole different set of feelings. I can just be in the moment more on stage than I can almost anywhere else. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yeah.
And every comedian will know this, when you're in the moment, that's when the audiences love you. That's when your material lands best. I mean, some audiences will hate you regardless. But if you're reading the room, if you're in the moment, if you're really present, that is when you have the absolute best chance of connecting with an audience. But there's still going to be some, usually men, who will sit with their arms crossed the moment I come on stage. And they don't laugh at me, and that's fine. That's their loss. Fuck them.
Fair. I think that's a very that's right. Yeah, fuck them, because I sometimes I think it happens. I think it was what gig last week. I did a Thursday, and it took someone, which I thought it was a brilliant, set. Everyone was, but it took like this guy 3 minutes of him just like looking at me, like straight at me with his arms crossed. And then I think I can't remember what joke I've done. And then I saw him just like turn to his, what I imagine was partner, and whisper in her ear, what I think is actually funny. And that's when he started laughing. And
Sometimes people want to be persuaded. And don't get me wrong, like I'm not full of contempt for audiences. Mostly I like them, but there are some people who just clearly don't want to laugh. Like, I don't understand what they're doing at a comedy show. But sometimes people find themselves at a comedy show and they just don't want to laugh, or they don't want to laugh for specific types of comics. And I am a 52-year-old woman, and I'm a foreigner, and I'm various other things that some people don't like, and that's not my problem. I will do my very best to engage as much of the audience as I can. And generally, people seem to, most people seem to think I'm all right, or at least, I'm likable on stage, even if the jokes don't always land. Maybe I'm working on new stuff, whatever. But there's always going to be some people, not always, there's sometimes some people who just don't want to laugh, and that's not my problem. I figured out early doors that I can't afford to let them get in my head. I will do my best to make people laugh, but if they don't want to, that's their problem.
how much do you like? Do you think there is a difference at all between Leslie in real life and Leslie on stage? Like, how much of a
Oh yeah,
character?
Well, I mean, Leslie on stage is really me, but it's one aspect of me. So on stage, I tend these days, I lean into my native accent. So I sound more obviously New Jersey on stage than I do. For instance, if I'm at work, I have a phone voice. I can use that when I'm speaking in meetings with my colleagues. And while I don't sound British, I don't sound specifically like I've just rolled out of an episode of The fucking Sopranos, right? Every, everybody's got a phone voice, right? Everyone
Yeah.
does. Only because I've lived in the UK a long time, my accent goes all over the fucking shop. But when I'm on stage and I'm performing, I lean, it's authentic. It's really me. It's my native accent, but I lean into it more because, well, for a number of reasons. One, I find that before I figured out that I should be doing that, if I was just talking like I would talk in a meeting at work, I would find audiences were confused because they'd be distracted by my accent, thinking, where is she from? So my accent would be all over. So I don't want the audience to be distracted. I want them to have a sense of who I am from the moment I step on stage. So that's part of it. But also, that's just my onstage persona is a little bit larger than life, which is funny because your audience won't see this. I'm a very small person physically. I'm only 5 feet tall. And I'm quite petite as a human. And so some people overlook me or underestimate me. But on stage, whether I present physically big or not, I don't. Who am I kidding? But I tell myself, like, I kind of think, oh, I've got to be bigger. And when I do that, audiences seem to respond better to me. Not like I'm physically bigger, but just bigger presence.
Yeah.
And it's funny, when the first time I met Stu Goldsmith in person, because I knew him online through lockdown, the first time I met him in person, the very first thing he ever said to me was, "Oh my God, but you've got tall girl energy." Which is, I think, going to be the name of my Edinburgh show next year. I've already started writing that. That's going to be my show next year.
So what's this year?
This year, my show is called The Chip Off the Gold Block.
The Chip Off the Gold Block. And what's it about?
Well, it's about identity and my dead dad.
Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, thank you. But it's a long time ago. My dad died when I was a kid. And so this is my first solo show. And I was writing, I was thinking a lot about identity and nature, nurture. This is a theme I come back to a lot. And then also there's this like trope of people doing a dead dad show. And I was like, hey, I've got one of them.
Same. Welcome to the club.
Yay! The club no one wants to be part of. Amazing. So my show is it's largely about identity, but part of my identity is being a fatherless child for half of my childhood. And that had of course it had a massive impact on me. I used to think it took me a long time to become more mentally healthy around the idea of growing up without a dad. Because I used to think of it as like there were two me's. There was the person I was when my dad was alive, and then there was everything that came after. Because that was obviously that's a massive change in my life. I was 9 years old when my dad died. Massive change, huge. And I will never be, it took me 10 years to accept that I will never be the person that I could have, should have, would have been. And I hate could have, should have, would have, because there's nothing to be gained by it. But it took me a long time to figure out I'm never going to be the person I could have, should have, would have been if my dad hadn't died. I'm a different person because of that. It was the most, what's the word I'm looking for? It was the most impactful thing that ever happened to me, obviously. Of course it was. And so, yeah, it had a massive impact on me. But I mean, that was a long time ago. I have been the fatherless person for way longer than, I mean, I only had dad for 9 years. That's nothing. Compared to some, and longer than others. So, whatever. My dad was great. I was lucky. I was really, really fond of him. He was a fantastic person. And I know some people can't say that. So it took me a good 10 years after my dad died to stop being furious with the world. I was an angry child.
which is fair enough.
I think so. I didn't know how to be anything else, so that's what you get. That was my
Think
option.
you know what? I actually found only maybe, and I'm not exaggerating, maybe a couple of months ago that I get sad because basically, just for reference, I lost my mom at 23 and lost my dad at 20 or
Oof.
19. Anyway,
Oh, that.
so that's like what my dad did almost 7 years ago, and my mom 3 years ago. And I've only found out that I think because I don't even know. I think when the one time when we met, I think I might have had some jokes about like my parents, but
Yeah,
I've only found again in the last couple of months I've actually got like I not got over it, but I made peace with the fact that they're not around anymore.
yeah,
And I think since then my jokes land so much better.
yeah,
But I do have many more evenings when I come home, and like even I think last weekend, like this past weekend, it was my birthday. On the day before my birthday, I just started crying. My partner saw me crying, and she was like, "Oh, what's going on?" I was like, "I just miss them." I genuinely, when you have that, and I accepted it. Even although, again, for my dad, it took me like 6 years to actually like even accept grieving him.
yeah,
Because to me, I was kind of like, yeah, he's dead, but I wouldn't get like my head around it. And then during the lockdown, I start like the signs started like coming out when they started like piling up, and but yeah, no, I was gonna say that it's like you said, sometimes you feel, and I do sometimes think about it, and I think the way you said it is so beautiful. Where like you think, well, I was fortunate enough to have a dad
yeah,
for longer than other people did, but in the other hand, yeah, it's not fair that you didn't have, like you said, at least double that. At least,
yeah.
uh, yeah.
But it's what you just said. It's not fair. I spent 10 years, really, at least 10 years after my dad died. That was like my personal motto. It's not fair. And I realized at the ripe old age of 19 that life's not fair, too fucking bad. Bitching about it isn't going to make my life any better. Um, and so, like, which is not to say, like, obviously, you've got to be able to deal with difficult things that happen. And, and I don't dwell on stuff, but I'm no stranger to being sad about things, but I try not to let it get beyond the point where I can't function. So I spent some time in my early 20s being quite depressed and just, if I was awake, I was crying. Not fun. Don't recommend. 0 of 10. No. Um,
Reviewing sadness and depression,
but
which is fair
there's a
enough.
lot,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of mental health illness in my family, and there's a lot of depression. There's anxiety. My dad was bipolar. My grandmother was schizophrenic.
What?
So I'm maybe more aware of some of my own personal triggers to go down difficult roads than maybe some other people would be. So that's a positive, I guess. But when I was dealing with my own depression in my early 20s, I say dealing with, I was not dealing with, I was curled in a ball crying a lot of the time. It was very unhappy. But, and that's why I made the point earlier about the difference between, you know, situational depression and clinical depression. And what I
Clinical.
was then was clinical depression. And I recognized it because I've seen it up close and personal with people in my family. Um, and grew up in that environment. And that is one of the main reasons I chose not to have children. Because I don't want to pass any of that shit on.
Oh,
No, it's not a sad thing. No,
No,
oh
no, no.
me.
I think it's
Hey,
sad the
I'm
fact that
52. I look 40. I've got money to spend. I'm a happy bunny.
I know.
Kidding me?
Have you seen the latest? I don't know if you follow him, but like Mark Maron
Mm.
just posted a new video, I think yesterday,
Oh, I didn't
and
see it.
he talks about like people, like when people go like, oh, like why don't you have any children? I was like, I think it's great. And he has like this whole, and I think, you know what, fair enough. That's, but I my awe, or like my sadness was actually more to figuring out that, oh my God, okay, like this is like my dad, this is my grandma. While I sometimes think about, but I see it in myself where I'm very, sometimes I feel like I'm becoming my dad.
Yeah.
And those are the times when I feel like most like angry and awkward, because in one hand, because I have mixed feelings about him anyway. I'm not going to dwell on that, but because I have such like mixture of feelings about him, I
Mm.
sometimes, and I also realize I sometimes I have very critical thinking, which apparently it's a sign of like having, or like it's one of the things about living with a personal, like my borderline personality disorder, which is my disorder. But yeah, every time I kind of like go into that, it's either yes or no, good or bad. I'm like, oh my God, shit, I'm becoming my dad,
We
and
all become our parents. Sorry to be bad news, but we all become our parents. I haven't had kids, but I did raise three stepkids with my ex-husband. So his kids, and they're all grown up now, and they're lovely. And I still have a really good relationship with all three of them. Because me and their dad, we just didn't work. He's not a terrible person, whatever. But I've got these wonderful stepkids who are all grown ass adults. I think at least one, possibly two of them are older than you, which is really annoying. Uh, But when they were little and I was, looking after them, I would hear my mother spilling out my mouth, and I'd be like, "What the fuck?" Because I never intended for that to happen. But we all become our parents because it's what you learn. It's how you figure out how to become a person in the world. And my mom's still with us. She's an elderly person now. She's 88 years old, and she's got stuff going on, and I've tried a lot of who I am is because of who my parents are and were. So a lot, like I could choose to be sad about various shit that's happened, or I can choose to go, okay, what can I take from this? What can I make from this? And yeah, my dad's not with me, but I have memories of him, which is great. And I mean, yes, I only have a few. And like, one of the things I've learned from my mom, because my mom, bless her, cannot see positivity if it came up and smacked her in the forehead. She just can't do it. She's not capable of it. And that's been the hardest thing for me to ever accept in my whole life, I think. But what I've got from that is that I can almost always find a positive somewhere. I'm like relentlessly driven to find a positive because the alternative sucks. So like with my dad, like there's not in existence anywhere a photo of me and my dad together, and that used to make me incredibly sad. Just it doesn't mean anything, but it made me sad. And I have this old photo of my dad when he was in the army in the 50s. He was stationed in Germany, but he spent a few days in London on leave. And I've got a photo of my dad at the Tower of London in 1954, I think. And my dad was about 23, 22 years old in that photo. And I went to the Tower of London and I found the place where his photo was taken. And I took a photo of me facing the space where he was. And my partner, who's an animator and who's very skilled with imagery, took that photo, made sure it was the right scale, made sure it looked like they were taken at the same time, so the shadows all playing. So there is a photo that now exists of me and my dad at the Tower of London. And what blows my mind is that I wasn't alive when his photo was taken. He wasn't alive when my photo was taken. The photos were taken 60 years apart. And I am 20 years older in my photo than my dad was in his. But it's cool because now I have a photo of me and my dad.
This is so, oh my God, I mean, this is so awesome. This is so incredible. And I'm a little bit jealous, but also I feel like, you know what, you deserve it, given uh, everything that's happened. And oh my, are you gonna use it on the poster for
It's
the?
not on the poster, no. So the show poster, the show is called The Chip Off the Gold Block because my last name's Gold. Right? And it's just a picture of me and the words. And it's just quite simple. And me looking a bit like, thoughtful or whatever. I don't know. I'm shit at photos. But no, that photo is often, it's not currently, but it's often my cover photo on my Facebook. At the moment, my cover photo is promoting my Edinburgh show.
Fair enough.
I'm
Fair
a
enough.
comedian and we're always relentlessly promoting. That's what you got. But I love that photo. And if I'm having a difficult day, it does bring me a bit of joy to think about that because it's not just about me and my dad. It's about my loving partner who spent the time to make that photo happen. I'm very lucky, actually. Like, I haven't always been lucky. I've had a lot of bad things happen, but I've got a wonderful partner who loves me just as I am. He's incredibly supportive of me running all over the fucking country, doing comedy everywhere. Will have me. He comes and takes photos at my gigs. So he's like our official photographer. You know, he's super supportive. He's incredible. I'm very lucky. And he's lucky too. And I need to say that because people forget that bit. People forget that bit. And when I was married to my ex, I wasn't a particularly happy person and I wasn't a particularly wonderful partner to him and he wasn't to me. And there was a lot of shit going on. But I remind myself, I'm really lucky to have Martin in my life, but Martin is really lucky to have me. And we're civil partners, me and him, and we are partners. We didn't get married, we got civil partnered because we are equal partners. And it's good for me to remind myself that he is lucky to have me and I'm lucky to have him. He's a really chill dude, and I sometimes get him more excited about things than he would be otherwise, and that's a good thing. And I'm a bit scattershot, and he grounds me and reminds me to, do the shit I need to do, and that's good as well. So we balance each other out really nicely. But
That
yeah,
sounds.
he's fucking lucky is what it is.
But this sounds so beautiful. And I feel like you've got so much. I don't know. I just found it very like this hour has been just so like soothing and
Oh,
and
cool.
and no, yeah, it's just been wonderful. I think you sound like such a cool person of like but in the sense of like, look. No, but not in the sense of like big headed, but just in the sense of like, oh, I know, like, and it just sounds like so calm and so relaxed, and so I feel like it's so. It sounds very good. Like I'm excited for you, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Like now when,
I think as much as I kick myself for not discovering that I wanted to be a comedian until I was 47, I think I'm a much more grounded person now than I was before. I had a lot of self-doubt and tons of anxiety when I was younger. And I don't think I could have done then what I can do now. So although I'm like, God, I'm 52 and I'm only just getting started. But I couldn't have done this 10 years ago and I couldn't have done it 20 years ago. Because I
sure,
had shit to deal with to get to this point. And I'm in a good place. I'm reasonably happy. Would I like to win the lottery? Yes, I would. But
amen, yes,
like who wouldn't, But yeah, I'm pretty lucky, and that is an important thing to bear in mind, because it's very tempting and it's very easy to fall down the self-pity well. It's so tempting and it's the easiest thing in the world and I just can't do it. Can't let myself do it. Spent way too much of my life doing that shit. Nope. No, thank you very much. So where I can find positives, I will always find them.
That's a wonderful way to, to end this episode.
Cool.
And well,
Weird.
thank you for saying that. And I still feel like there is so much more to talk about, but I just don't want to take more of your time. But I genuinely think that this was brilliant. Now, for one final time, let's go through the plugs again, just because I feel like I hope it goes really well, and that's why I want everyone to know where to find you. What's the name of the show at the Edinburgh Fringe this year, and your regular night in London, and like specifically what it is, and how do people find out about that?
Cool. Thank you for that. So my Edinburgh show, I'm doing the full run in Edinburgh this year at Bar 50 on Cowgate at 4 p.m. every day. I'm taking one day off in the middle because I'm worth it. The show is called A Chip Off the Gold Block. It's fun. Yeah, it's a dead dad show, but it's fun. And, and it's with Laughing Horse and Pay What You Want tickets. And I'm doing relaxed performances every Monday as well. So more accessible for people who are neurodivergent, because I think that's important. And my regular show, I run a show in London. It's currently twice a month, but we're looking to expand that in the autumn to be every Tuesday at the Angelic in Angel. And we have a mixed experience lineup. So we have a pro headliner, an opener, and then we have people sort of from throughout the comedy circuit, different levels of experience, including often a newbie. Sometimes people doing their first ever spot at Sofa So Funny, which is the ethos that the show started with back when we were on Zoom. And so also a really important part of the show is it's not the kind of comedy show where people get picked on. It's friendly, it's inclusive, it's diverse, and it's meant, because comedy's meant to be fun and people forget that. It's meant to be fun. So, like, if you come to the show, you're going to have a good time. I only book people who are funny, and I don't book anyone who punches down because fuck that. There's plenty of other stages they could perform on. So
Oh my God, that's true.
yeah, there's some, yeah, that's another whole conversation.
That's another conversation.
But it's edgelords need not apply because that's not the vibe. It's a friendly vibe. It's a lovely, wonderful. I've worked really hard to cultivate a show that I would want to perform at, and I think I've done that. The feedback's always really nice, and we want more people to come. And we keep it affordable. The ticket is always less than the price of a pint, and there's always half price tickets available as well. There's always a handful of those because I think comedy should be accessible to everyone. And if anyone's really desperate, they should just message me and I'll comp them. Because it's not really a money-making venture. It's about putting on a good comedy night. But yeah, people should come. They should find us by looking on all the socials for Sofa So Funny, or one word. Not TikTok, because I am 52. But Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And they can find me by looking at Leslie Gold, and it's Leslie the American way or the boys way. It's Leslie Gold, like the color. That's it.
Gold like the color, as in like gold like the metal.
Yeah. Gold because people misspell gold. And we live in a world where people misspell my last name, which is gold. So I need to just say it's gold like the color, or like the metal, or like the opposite of silver. But people misspell my name, and I don't like. I understand. Yeah,
I can't see it because I sometimes think like, no, it can't be like it's Gould.
I get that a lot. It's not.
Yeah,
That's a different word. That's Gould.
gold. Yeah, exactly. And I know of that, but I can see why other people would be like
Yeah,
gold, as in like gold.
gold. It's just gold. It's
Yeah,
my actual name. It's not
but
even a stage name or anything.
anyway, Leslie, it was lovely chatting with you today. Uh, Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that. It was a bit self-indulgent, but I enjoyed it.
No, I think it was brilliant. And again, there was much more, and we'll continue this again. But yeah, good luck with the run. Good luck with everything.
Thank you,
And
and good
sounds.
luck to you with your comedy.
Thank you. We'll see how it goes. Bye for now.
Bye.
Okay, so what do you think? Was it good? Was it what you hoped for? Was it better? Was it? I hope it wasn't worse. It was definitely good for me. It was great. I really enjoyed it, and I just hope you check out Leslie's work. And if you were going to Edinburgh, for the Fringe, check our show out. But also, if you're ever either in London, or if you're either ever in London, or if you actually live here, yeah, check out the comedy night that Leslie is putting on. And from me, Pickle, and Sarma, I think that's everything for now. No, everything. And also, again, just for now, until the next episode. But yeah, stay skillful. Look after yourselves. Bye bye.